Part 14. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 131. Since the tai sui is composed of various bacteria, the bacteria will spread into the water, so the water soaked with tai sui will also have certain effects. Of course, whether this effect is beneficial or harmful cannot be generalized. At present, it seems that a few points can be confirmed. The poachers found this place with a special water quality sample. The water quality here is different, not because of the waterfall outside, but because of the existence of tai sui in the cave. The water in the cave flows through the pool where tai sui is located, and after being soaked by tai sui, it finally flows out of the large pool outside the cave. Second, the effects shown by this tai sui are mostly positive. The wild man and the giant salamander should have been taking the water soaked with tai sui all year round. As a result, the giant salamander has a long lifespan, the wild man has a strong body, and has amazing recovery ability. This is also the most important point. The quality and efficacy of tai sui grown in different environments are absolutely different. Tai sui grown in beautiful places can be regarded as absorbing the essence of nature and extraordinary appearance. It is said that there are things similar to tai sui in the swamp. For the same reason, tai sui, who lives in muddy sewage and even miasma for many years, absorbs the smell of corruption. After hundreds or thousands of years, it is absolutely poisonous. Su Ming sent a spiritual force to the savage, and then helped the savage climb out of the small pool. Standing on the other side of the pool, he helped Su Ming lift the tai sui under the water. Unexpectedly, tai sui was too big, and the place where he touched it was soft and slippery. Su Ming lifted it twice, but felt that tai sui was extremely heavy, soft, and unbearable. With a little force, it was like pulling fat meat and only a large piece was pulled up. It was impossible to lift it. If you do it this way, you have to tear this tai sui apart. Tai sui has a self-regeneration function, similar to a fission body. Even if you cut a piece off regularly, it will grow back in a short time, and the cut piece can also become a new tai sui to continue to survive. It is very magical. Although the tai sui has this magical function, the value of a complete tai sui must be higher. From a subjective perspective, people have an inexplicable worship of huge creatures. A complete giant tai sui and a pile of minced meat, even if they are of the same value, must look more shocking when they are complete. Su Ming thought about it, and the soft tai sui in front of him suddenly reminded him of a joke in the novel Grave Robbers Chronicles. So without saying anything, he took off all his clothes and pants and put on a pair of big shorts. The temperature in the mountains is originally low, and the cave is even colder without sunlight. Su Ming shivered immediately, and even the birds shrank back. The savage saw Su Ming taking off his clothes, scratched his head in confusion, and looked down at himself. He was covered with hair, and it seemed that there was nothing to take off. "Come and help." Su Ming jumped into the water, stepped on the soft tai sui under his feet, and hurriedly put his clothes and pants under the tai sui. The tai sui was lying on the bottom of the water, and its diameter was almost the same as Su Ming's height. Fortunately, tai sui was soft and easy to handle, so he could rub it any way he wanted. After wasting a lot of effort, he finally used his clothes to completely hold tai sui. The tai sui, which was originally flat, was gathered on the clothes like a small meat mountain. 1, 2, 3. Get up. Su Ming and the wild man each grabbed one end of the clothes, exerted force on both sides, and slowly lifted tai sui up. Based on the strength transmitted from his hands, Su Ming estimated that this tai sui probably weighed more than 100 kilograms. There was a splash of water, and finally the tai sui was lifted out of the water intact. The movement here attracted the attention of Gray Fang and others. Except for the saker falcon that went out hunting early in the morning, the remaining animals gathered here. Gray Fang kept circling around the big meat pie, occasionally stretching out his claws to scratch tai sui, very curious. The giant salamander crawled to the side of Tai Sui, staring at the fat and tender Tai Sui with two small eyes, and it seemed that he had been coveting it for a long time. Seeing this, the savage went up and kicked the giant salamander. The giant salamander was kicked over several times and hit a big rock. He turned over and climbed up, still staring at Tai Sui from a distance, with a malicious look. With a sound of flapping wings, the two macaw sisters jumped directly onto Tai Sui, as if they were playing on a trampoline, bouncing their bodies and stepping on Tai Sui. So dizzy. So dizzy. So slippery. So slippery. Get off. Su Ming grabbed the two guys by the neck and pulled them down. What a joke. Tai Sui's body was soft and completely defenseless under the claws of these two guys. Before they could jump a few times, their hard claws had scratched many small holes on Tai Sui. The white-faced golden monkey seemed to be the most timid. It came last with its tail tucked between its legs. After coming, it did not do anything else. It was not as active as other animals. Instead, it squatted obediently next to Su Ming's calf, swinging its tail. I have something to say. Listen carefully. Don't hurt this Tai Sui in the future, especially the giant salamander and you two parrots. Su Ming pointed at Tai Sui and his mental power enveloped the animals present. Su Ming was not sure what the Tai Sui was used for, how long it had lived, and other related information. But just in terms of its current value, it was already quite amazing. The boss behind the poachers asked for more than $1 million for the labor fee alone. If it were sold on the market, the price would definitely reach a staggering figure. In addition, the water soaked by it has some very special effects. Su Ming is now engaged in aquaculture, which may be helpful, and the wild people and giant salamanders seem to need this special water. Besides, even if the medical value of such a big Tai Sui is zero, it is extremely rare as a collection. So, it may be a bit too much to describe this Tai Sui as a priceless treasure, but for Su Ming, this Tai Sui is still worthy of the 4 words priceless. It must be protected. If these animals are playing, and accidentally destroy it, it will be heartbreaking. The mental power is like a radar, released in all directions, and greeted every animal around. And part of the mental power happened to fall on the Tai Sui. What I never expected was that the Tai Sui actually responded. Huh? Su Ming's eyes suddenly widened, and he looked at the Tai Sui on the ground fiercely. This thing is not an animal, how can it respond to mental power like an animal? Is it alive? Su Ming was afraid that he had made a mistake, so he quickly concentrated and sent another spiritual force towards Tai Sui. Just like before, as soon as the spiritual force came into contact with Tai Sui responded immediately. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 132. Tai Sui once again responded to his mental power, but the content of the response was far less clear than that of animals. It had no substantive meaning. It was just an instinctive response, just like a person casually saying his name when someone calls him. Say oh. Even fish with the lowest intelligence, or even invertebrates such as earthworms, communicate with spiritual power far more complexly than Tai Sui. As for the Tai Sui in front of me, the communication with it is not like communication, but more like a person shouting towards the valley, and some echoes are heard from the valley. But no matter how you say it, no matter how weak the response is, it is just a response. Mental power is not effective for all life. It is only for animals and has no effect on plants. In other words, this Tai Sui has now evolved into an animal. Even at this time, its intelligence and thinking ability are almost non-existent, far behind any known animal, let alone on par with smart guys like cats and dogs. It is also unable to understand Su Ming's instructions, let alone maybe he can do whatever work Su Ming wants. But now that it has become an animal, it is no longer in its original state of confusion, and there is the possibility of evolution in the future. Su Ming calmly thought about it. Tai Sui, a creature, was already on the dividing line between plants and animals. This Tai Sui had obviously lived for many years, and it was entirely possible for it to evolve one step further and become either an animal or a plant. Since Tai Sui is now considered an animal, mental power is also helpful for its evolution. Su Ming scratched his head and looked at Tai Sui in front of him, thinking that one day, this man who has lived for at least hundreds of years will man, what kind of scene would it be if real intelligence and thinking ability were produced? Wouldn't he become a monster? Su Ming squatted next to Tai Sui again and studied it with his mental power for a while. In the world of mental power, Tai Sui was like a newborn baby. He was ignorant and didn't know anything, but his vitality was very strong and he was devoted. Power is like nutrition, absorbed by this newborn baby. Spiritual power can indeed promote evolution. Su Ming was slightly happy and quickly poured more mental power into Tai Sui's body. What surprised Su Ming was that although this Tai Sui was still in the baby stage from the perspective of animal evolution, its appetite was much larger than that of other highly intelligent animals. Su Ming's whole body's mental power was about the same. 70% of it was used, and all of it was absorbed by Tai Sui, who still felt like he wasn't full. According to Su Ming's current level as an animal friend, 70% of his mental power is enough to save a severely injured medium-sized animal that is on the verge of death, or directly significantly improve an animal with average intelligence to the point where it can barely communicate with humans. And with so much spiritual power poured into Tai Sui's body, Tai Sui was still the same, confused and almost unchanged. Life forms like Tai Sui have a history of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years and are known as living fossils. In the life system, it can be said that it is very low level and does not even have basic intelligence. But from another perspective, it can also be considered as a super life form with endless secrets and cannot be compared with ordinary animals or plants. It seems that if you want Tai Sui to truly produce intelligence or even communicate, it is definitely not something that can be achieved in a short time. Aha! The savage's voice came from one side. Su Ming looked up and saw two macaws flying over him at some point. One stood on the savage's head, probably using his hair-covered head as a nest, and the other one stood on the savage's head. One stood on its shoulder, swaying. These two parrots were fat and big, weighing several dozen kilograms. With the terrifying strength of the savages, they were nothing. But now the savage was seriously injured. The two parrots made such a fuss, and the wound opened a little, letting out a low groan of pain. Savages have the highest intelligence among animals and the lowest among humans. If he had been in the past, he would have knocked out the brains of these two parrots, but after a day of getting along, he probably knew that these two furry animals, this guy is Su Ming's subordinate. In other words, we are now a family. He can't beat or drive him away. He can only roar like a threat and look at Su Ming, waiting for him to make the decision. Come down here. If you have nothing to do, go help Hai Dongqing hunt. Su Ming gestured with his fist and pretended to fight. The two parrots immediately became frightened. They screamed strangely and flew away from the savage. They got out of the cave and found food for themselves. Went. See, if they bully you again in the future, just scare them and don't hit them. Su Ming told the savage while pushing Tai Sui into the small pool again. The water in which Tai Sui had soaked had a very good effect on the recovery of the savage's injuries. The most important thing now is to get the savage back to health as soon as possible. He, the savage imitated Su Ming's example, waved his fist viciously in the direction the parrot left, roared, and grinned, revealing his big teeth. This guy is inherently strong. Coupled with the messy hair and long beard, he is scary without trying to pretend. Now he raises his fists to imitate Su Ming, and he immediately looks extremely ferocious. The two macaws have already taken flight. He left, but frightened several other animals. Hui Ya jumped back half a meter, bared his teeth at the savage and roared. The big giant salamander used all four limbs and twisted its body and quickly hid behind a big rock without daring to show its head. The little golden monkey quickly ducked behind Su Ming. Half of Su Ming's small white face appeared from behind Su Ming's calf, looking at the savage warily. "Is it so scary?" Su Ming was stunned. He raised his fist and roared as he had just done. As a result, these animals ignored him at all. The savage was also stunned for a moment, then he opened his clenched fists and scratched his head, and giggled hee at several animals around him, as if he was a little sorry. Su Ming was speechless, pointed to the pool, and said to the savage, "Keep soaking, and when you recover from your injury, I will take you back to the city." Su Ming disappeared again. "Do you want to call the police?" Sister Tong asked Dean Song a little anxiously. He only asked for 3 days leave. Counting the 5 days on the weekend, today is already the 7th day. I went to listen to Feng Shui Pavilion and didn't see him. After asking, no one in the zoo had seen him. His car was still near the waterside pavilion. Something must have happened. Dean Song was relatively calm and said, "It's less than 48 hours, so the police will not be accepted. Tell me about this child. What should he do if he runs into the mountains for fun? What if he encounters a wild beast or something in the wilderness? God forbid anything happens to him. Xiao Su is now the pillar of our garden. If something happened, and the whole zoo must be in chaos," Sister Tong said quietly. Although Sister Tong did not receive any direct benefits from Su Ming, as an old employee of the zoo, she saw with her own eyes that Su Ming made the zoo more prosperous day by day after his arrival. Of course, she hoped that Su Ming would be safe and sound. Dean Song chuckled. If other employees disappeared for 2 days, Dean Song might be more anxious than Sister Tong, but Su Ming was another matter. After experiencing a series of incidents, Dean Song had gradually become accustomed to Su Ming's behavior. The boy disappears from time to time, and every time he disappears, he seems to bring some surprises to everyone. "Hey, you are worried. Don't worry. If you go somewhere else, don't dare to say anything. In the wild, I believe in Xiao Su's ability and nothing will happen. Even if he really encounters something, didn't he still take Yang out? Well, both eagles and wolves know the way and will come back to report," Dean Song said. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 133. In the ward of Yang Chuan First People's Hospital. As the saying goes, people feel refreshed during happy events. A person's physical state will affect his mood. In turn, a person's mental state will also affect his physical health. For example, Zhou Jin, the last time he saw Su Ming being interviewed on the TV station, several finless porpoises that should have belonged to him, or at least that he thought belonged to him, had turned into zoo animals, and he was so angry that he vomited blood on the spot. But after learning through some channels that he had been designated as a model worker in the district, Zhou Jin's mood gradually improved again. He felt that the bad luck during this period was completely over, and good days were just around the corner, and the haze in his heart was completely gone. Gone, the sun shines. People feel refreshed when happy events happen, and when they are in a good mood, their condition recovers quickly. The doctor told him that if this trend continues, in about 2 or 3 weeks, he will be able to get out of bed, sit in a wheelchair, and live a life of 1 or 2 after a month. I can barely walk. In a deep mountain cave. I don't know whether it's because the savage is physically strong, or because soaking in Tai Sui's water has miraculous effects, or both. Anyway, the savage's gunshot wounds recover at an amazingly fast rate. In just 2 or 3 days, the wound is basically healed. It no longer affects movement, as long as you don't do strenuous exercise. Okay, let's get ready to go. Su Ming stood at the edge of the large pool outside the cave, with a row of his soldiers standing in front of him. The two macaws and He Donking, the three-bird team, did not need to worry about Su Ming's movements. Huiya gradually got used to life in the wild, and his mobility in the mountains was much stronger than that of a human being, Su Ming. The same was true for the golden monkey, it grew up in the mountains. Now that Boss He and the others can find this place, the cave is no longer safe and Tai Sui and baby fish must be taken away. Tai Sui and giant salamander are in a bit of trouble. Tai Sui had no consciousness and no legs, so the huffing and puffing pile of flesh could not move at all. Fortunately, there were strong savages around. Su Ming used the canvas left by Boss He and the others to make a simple big package, stuffed Tai Sui into the package, and let the savages carry it. The giant salamander did have legs, but it was difficult to move in the mountains. The savage once again acted as a coolie. He picked up the nearly 2-meter-long giant salamander and clamped it under his armpit. Taking advantage of the 2 days that the savages were recovering from their injuries, Su Ming moved the poachers' shady equipment and asked the queen bees to send out a large number of swarms. The ants moved them one by one to the Beiwa Valley and hid them. They are mainly weapons. These things are actually of little use in the city and can easily cause trouble, but they might come in handy at some point. Okay, let's hit the road. Su Ming snapped his fingers, and as soon as he turned around and took a step, he felt his body light up and his whole body floated up. The savage lifted Su Ming onto his shoulders with one hand and smiled at Su Ming. Can you do it? Don't open the wound. Su Ming was riding on the savage's shoulders as if on a horse, which was very energy-saving, but he was still a little worried about the savage's injury. The savage grinned, indicating that it was okay, and then strode forward. Su Ming has finally experienced what it means to walk as fast as the wind. The savage is already tall, and his 2 long legs are swinging around like 2 long bamboo trunks, scuttling along the ground little by little. After a long stretch, the scenery on both sides flew backwards. Su Ming, the giant salamander, and Tai Sui weighed more than 400 kilograms plus 1, but they did not affect the speed of the savage. In this way, the time that originally took half a day to complete was greatly shortened. When it was getting dark, Su Ming was riding on the shoulders of the savage and could already see the outline of the road and the zoo at the foot of the mountain from a distance. The last part of the road is more difficult to walk because it is relatively close to the city and reaches the edge of the mountain. There will occasionally be tourists going up the mountain to play. If someone discovers a savage or a Tai Sui, that would not be good. Maybe there is some kind of the big monster called state will jump out and tell Su Ming, the savages, Tai Sui, all belong to me. So Su Ming directed the savages to take the difficult path down the mountain, wasting some time, and then sneaked back to the zoo from the side of Shuahanhu. By the time we returned to Ting Feng Shui Pavilion, it was already dark. Su Ming asked Goza to bring a few wasps to watch around Feng Shui Pavilion, and then returned to the water pavilion with a large group of men. Have a meeting, sitting in the small room on the second floor, Su Ming looked at the newly recruited men. Some of these guys can see the light, and some cannot. It takes some effort to arrange them. Good. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 134. Early the next morning, Su Ming ran to Dean Song's office, murmuring with Dean Song for a long time, and then went to Sister Tong's place to sell the holiday. Since he suddenly disappeared, he had to listen to Sister Tong's nagging. Then in the afternoon, 2 pieces of news broke out in the zoo. At first, when the administrator of Monkey Mountain was feeding, he suddenly discovered that there was a little monkey with a white face and light golden fur all over the mountain. He was in charge of Monkey Mountain and was of course quite familiar with monkeys. He could tell at a glance that this little guy who appeared out of nowhere was the kindling snub-nosed monkey, a national protected animal. The macaques that originally lived in the Monkey Mountain are also state protected animals and are protected by law. However, compared with the kinling golden monkeys, the macaques are insignificant. As a national protected animal, there are less than 3,000 kinling golden monkeys left. Has been included in the red list of endangered species according to the statistics of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and is worthy of being a national treasure. Speaking of national treasures, there are actually many national treasures in China. In terms of cherishment, the kinling snub-nosed monkey is not as good as the giant panda. But the problem is that the giant panda is a specialty of Sichuan. No matter how precious it is, it has nothing to do with Yangchuan City or the province. However, the kinling golden monkey is a representative rare species in Yangchuan City and is valuable. There is no room for words. In fact, the signature animal of Yangchuan City is the kinling golden monkey, but the real kinling golden monkey has not appeared in the zoo for many years. Not only are there no kinling snub-nosed monkeys, Yangchuan City Zoo has not even attracted any other species of golden monkeys for many years. As a large national zoo, this is obviously unreasonable. No matter how rare golden monkeys are, after all, the species is huge, and it is not easy to raise a few. Difficulty. The reason can be understood after a little thought. Yangchuan City is represented by the kinling golden monkey, but there are other types of golden monkeys in the zoo. Isn't this a slap in the face? It shows that Yangchuan City's animal protection work is very poor, and even local endemic animals are not well protected. We can only find fake and shoddy ones to make up the numbers. Out of sight, out of mind, the relevant leaders of Yangchuan City simply refuse to allow the zoo to introduce any species of golden monkeys. The administrator rubbed his eyes and confirmed that the little guy not far away was the kinling golden monkey. He was confused at first, then ecstatic, and then his heart suddenly sank again. Macaques are not peaceful guys. Although everyone is a monkey, macaques will not give you a good look just because you are a golden monkey. On the contrary, macaques have always had a bad attitude towards outsiders who intrude into their territory. Friendly. Seeing a large group of macaques surrounding the golden monkey, the administrator's legs went weak and he was so scared that he cried. If a kinling snub-nosed monkey was attacked by other macaques in front of him, or even killed, he, the administrator, would have done his best. Oh my God, the administrator was also quick-witted. He had an idea and quickly took out his cell phone to call Su Ming. In the situation in front of him, no one else could do anything except him. However, the administrator's finger quickly stopped on the dial button. It had been several minutes since he entered the Monkey Mountain. When he took a closer look, he saw that the macaques not only had no intention of attacking the golden monkey, but instead chattered around the golden monkey. The barking was just out of curiosity and to show some friendly behavior. The old Monkey King was sitting on the top of the mountain not far away. He didn't express any dissatisfaction with the intruder at all, just basking in the sun with his eyes squinted. The old Monkey King's precious son, Xiao Kong, was squatting behind the golden monkey in the middle of the group of monkeys, scratching lice for it, and there was also the little dirty female monkey that Su Ming got from nowhere last time, which is now the crown princess. Holding some fruits and other things and handing them to the little golden monkey, showing a harmonious and friendly scene of brothers and sisters. Yet, the administrator felt that his attempt had been subverted again. He was stunned for a while before he remembered that he had to report it immediately, so he dialed the number of the dean's office and stammered, "Dean, here in Monkey Mountain," appeared out of nowhere. "Oh, it's a golden monkey, right? Su Ming already told me that he found it when he was playing in the back mountain. He was slightly injured and took it back to the zoo to raise." "Huh? Oh." The administrator said blankly. "That's it? You take good care of the golden monkey. I'm writing a report on the discovery of the golden monkey. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. There is an extra golden monkey in the Monkey Mountain. For most tourists and employees, it is impossible to distinguish it from a distance, and it has not caused much sensation. But not far from Shuahun Lake, there was an explosion next to the aquarium that was under construction. A large group of people gathered around the 3 floors inside and outside, including zoo employees, tourists, and construction workers. After confirming that the finless porpoise was left in Yangchuan City, the provincial capital could only hold its nose and recognize it. However, the finless porpoise cannot always be kept in Shuahun Lake. That place is open, with people coming and going, and there are also cruise ships. Traveling on the lake is not conducive to protecting finless porpoises. So the Yangchuan City and provincial government spent money to build an aquarium at the zoo. Some time ago, Wang Jianxi arranged the funds and the aquarium officially started construction. The head of the security section wears many hats and is the construction supervisor of the zoo. He leads several security guards to inspect the construction site every day. At about 3 p.m., Su Ming came to the construction site with a strange strong man who was pushing a cart. Su Ming greeted Section Chief Dong from a distance. Old Dong, when building the aquarium, add an auxiliary building to raise giant salamanders. What giant salamander? Where did the giant salamander come from? Old Dong was stunned. Before he could understand what Su Ming meant, he saw the strong man tilt the cart. There was a big, black, long, and thick creature in the car. It twisted its body and crawled out of the car. My God, what is that? Old Dong was startled by the big creature in the car. When he looked closely, it turned out to be a giant salamander. In fact, giant salamanders are not particularly rare. Now they can be cultivated on a large scale by humans. 1 kilogram can be bought for 200 or 300 yuan on the market. But seeing a giant salamander over 2 meters in size with your own eyes is a completely different feeling. Just like crocodiles, whether wild or domesticated, their number far exceeds that of giant salamanders. But if a giant crocodile more than 10 meters long suddenly appears in front of you one day, the shock is not something that ordinary people can accept. Scatter! Scatter! Everyone be careful! Section Chief Dong yelled at the loudspeaker, then approached the giant salamander cautiously, pointed the electric baton at it, and asked Su Ming, "Is this really a giant salamander? How come it's so big? Where did you get it from?" Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 135. It would have been better if the old boss hadn't shouted. When he shouted with a loudspeaker, the sound could be heard from far away. People are curious. When they heard that there was a danger, they didn't disperse, but gathered around. In the eyes of most people, giant salamanders are cute, adorable, harmless, precious, or delicious. Not many people really know that giant salamanders are ferocious, so when they see a super big giant salamander, the people around them don't realize the danger at all. Instead, they bravely approach one by one, wanting to observe this big guy up close. Even Section Chief Dong took out an old-fashioned mobile phone to take pictures after the initial surprise. Back off! You all want to die! Su Ming yelled. It would be easy to deal with 1 or 2 people approaching. He used his mental power to control the giant salamander not to attack. But if so many people approached together, the giant salamander might be frightened and behave abnormally, and his mental power might not be able to control him all at once. He had seen the power of giant salamanders. For example, when the children were about to reach out to touch the heads of giant salamanders, the giant salamanders could bite their heads to pieces. It was useless for Section Chief Dong, who was in uniform, to shout with a loudspeaker. Moreover, when Su Ming shouted with his voice, the people around him seemed to have heard nothing. They all wanted to touch the salamanders. Het! A roar suddenly sounded in the crowd, like a thunderclap out of thin air. The sturdy man with a stubble on his face who was following Su Ming rushed into the crowd, waved his arms like iron pillars to both sides, pushed the crowd away, and then grabbed 2 children who were about to touch the heads of giant salamanders, 1 in each hand, and threw them into the crowd. Wow wow wow! The crowd was quite dense, and the two naughty children were not injured, but they were scared and cried as soon as they landed. The parents of the child were immediately upset and stood up to argue, but they didn't dare to trouble the big man. The guy stood there like a steel giant. It was obvious that he was not easy to mess with. The parents were smart and pointed at Su Ming and asked for an explanation. "You want an explanation? What the hell? Damn it, I saved your child's life, and you dare to ask me for an explanation." Without waiting for these people to respond, Su Ming roared, gathered all his strength, and kicked a newly planted poplar tree next to him. The poplar tree was as thick as a child's arm. Su Ming kicked it, and the tree shook a few times, but it didn't break. Instead, it shocked Su Ming and made him take a step back. "You come." Su Ming's old face turned red, and he nodded at the strong man. The strong man went up and kicked it in the same way. He didn't see him use any strength. He just raised his foot casually, and the tree squeaked and broke in two. "Everyone, watch." Su Ming held the tree trunk with both hands and put it in front of the giant salamander. The giant salamander seemed to be provoked. It suddenly opened its mouth and bit a section of the tree trunk. Then, like a crocodile, it rolled over on the spot. Squeaky, in a sound that made people's ears sore, the tree trunk was twisted into a dough twist. Seeing this scene, several parents who were making trouble did not dare to speak. Thinking back to their children who had just touched the giant salamander, they immediately broke out in a cold sweat. "See, this thing will bite people." Su Ming rolled his eyes in annoyance, and then added, "After the aquarium is built, everyone can come back if they want to see it." The crowd then retreated several meters back, as if they were afraid that the giant salamander would suddenly attack and hurt people. Okay, everyone, go and do what you need to do." Section Chief Dong waved his hand and dispersed the crowd. Su Ming let the giant salamander climb back into the cart and said to Section Chief Dong, "Old Dong, I found this by accident in the back mountain. I have already reported it to the dean. When you build the aquarium, don't forget to leave a nest for it. Don't worry, it's no problem." It just so happens that the aquarium originally only had 3 finless porpoises, which seemed deserted. Now with this giant salamander, it finally looks a bit better. This big giant salamander may even be able to apply for the Guinness World Record. After talking about the giant salamander, Old Dong looked at the sturdy man next to Su Ming curiously and said, "Your friend? He is strong enough." "My distant relative from my hometown came to seek refuge with me." Su Ming laughed. The appearance of the golden monkey and the giant salamander attracted all the attention of the zoo, so that many people did not pay much attention to the fact that there was a relative from my hometown next to Su Ming. This burly relative from my hometown was of course the wild man. Last night, Su Ming let the wild man take a bath in the waterside pavilion, and then shaved his hair and beard, and bought a few sets of large sportswear in the morning. Compared with the wild man in the imagination, this wild man originally had less beast appearance and more human. After Su Ming dressed him up, he looked like a mountain man who had just entered the city, burly, honest, and dull. After shaving his hair and beard, Su Ming also found that this wild man was actually not bad. Except for his slightly high cheekbones, his appearance was about 60-70 points. Moreover, due to years of living in the wild, his eyes were bright and energetic. "Why do you look familiar?" Su Ming always felt that the wild man's eyebrows looked familiar. Could it be a good friend from the previous life? In addition to the wild man, some unknown changes have also occurred in the small lake of Tingfeng Water Pavilion. At one end of the Water Army Lake, a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals under the water started a new project. This time the goal is to connect the small lake next to the Water Pavilion and the Water Army Lake. If you pay attention, there are obviously more wasps and bees on the branches around the Water Army Lake. The Wolf-Dog brothers and the cat were also transferred back to the Water Pavilion by Su Ming to take turns to guard the Water Pavilion. After returning from the construction site, the savage took off his clothes, wearing only a pair of big shorts, and jumped into the small lake, drinking the lake water in big gulps. Suke didn't care about it. While cooking in the kitchen, he said to the giant salamander lying on the side, "You should live here first, and don't bite the taisui. Otherwise, I will stew you." "Yes, this is stewed fish." Su Ming took out a large piece of fat fish tail from the pot of fish soup and threw it to the giant salamander, threatening it. The giant salamander didn't seem to be afraid of the heat. It swallowed the fish tail weighing more than 2 kilograms in one bite, and ate it with relish. It was not stupid. The stewed fish was so delicious that it didn't bite the taisui hidden in the small lake by Su Ming. Moreover, the lake water soaked by the taisui is also very beneficial to the growth of the giant salamander. Unless it is starving to death, it will not easily cut the taisui. The fish in the pot was fished from the Shuahun Lake. Su Ming tasted it himself and it tasted good. It was comparable to the fish from the Huading Reservoir that he had eaten before. As for the taste, it depends on the skills of the fish cook. Recently, the fish in the Shuahun Lake has increased rapidly. In a few months, it will be available on the market. Inviting the savage to come in and eat the fish, Su Ming himself took the phone, thought about it, and dialed Wang Jianshi's number. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 136. Su Ming gained a lot during this trip to the mountains, but his greatest achievement or contribution was actually killing an entire armed poaching team. However, this achievement was too troublesome to explain, and once it was made public, it would likely bring him a series of troubles, so Su Ming was not going to tell anyone. He called Wang Jianxi to ask for his help to solve the problem of the wild man's identity. This guy couldn't always be an illegal resident. He told Wang Jianxi about the situation in general, and it was the same thing he had prepared long ago. "Yes, he is a relative from my hometown, and he is my distant cousin. At that time, we didn't implement family planning. He was the second child, so he couldn't get a household registration, and he was an illegal resident. When he was a child, he had a fever that damaged his brain, so he couldn't speak fluently and was a little stupid. Now he has come to the city to seek refuge with me, and I am thinking about whether I can get him a household registration. It was really difficult to do before, but now that the second child policy has been relaxed, it is much easier. So, you send me information such as photos and names, and I will find someone to do it for you." Wang Jianxi agreed very readily. Name. Su Ming thought about it. This guy is so fierce and he is my cousin. So I might as well call him Su Ming. Wang Jianxi chatted with Su Ming for a while. Although it was just a chat, it actually contained a certain amount of information. He told Su Ming about the selection of model workers. If he was selected, it would be the best. If he was not selected, he should not be disappointed. After all, Yangchuan City has not seen a model worker as young as Su Ming in the past 10 years. According to Su Ming's rapid rise, even if he is not selected this time, he will definitely be selected in the future. There are many benefits to being a model worker, but since Wang Jianxi said so, it is almost like giving Su Ming a guarantee. Even if he fails this time, he will be selected next time. Su Ming will certainly not say anything more. Wang Jianxi also asked Su Ming to persuade Wang Hao to drink less alcohol. He heard that Wang Hao's health condition has not been very good recently. He went to the hospital for physical examination several times, and his blood pressure and blood lipids were frighteningly high. "Uncle Wang, you know that his job requires socializing. How about this? When my business is a little bigger, I can just let Wang Hao come to work for me." Su Ming also shook his head. Last time, he asked Wang Hao to help find someone to make a fish saddle. Wang Hao said that he had a project to attract investment, and he had to accompany various parties to eat and drink and socialize every day. On the surface, it looks very glorious and fun, but in fact, this kind of socializing is very hard. Su Ming did not expect Wang Hao to stick to it at first and put all his efforts into this project. In any case, with his father's protection and the dividends from the cruise business, Wang Hao can still live comfortably even if he does nothing. The call lasted only a few minutes. When Su Ming hung up, a nest of fish disappeared. The wild man Su Ming did not look full at all. He held the big pot in his arms, lowered his head and licked the bottom of the pot, licking it with a swishing sound. Is it because my cooking skills are too good? Su Ming's mouth twitched twice. Well, I don't have the energy to cook another pot, so I'll order takeout. He called and ordered a takeout worth several hundred yuan. Thinking that Su Ming was also eating cooked food for the first time, Su Ming didn't dare to order too much oily and meaty food. He ordered a portion of various dishes and a 10 yuan steamed bun. More than a dozen dishes, fried, stir-fried, deep-fried, and boiled, were placed on the big round table. They were colorful and fragrant, and looked very appetizing. Su Ming didn't think about it, stretched out his big hand and grabbed a plate of fried kidneys. A pair of chopsticks appeared out of thin air and hit the back of his hand. Su Ming shrank his hand and looked at Su Ming in confusion. Use chopsticks to eat in the future, Su Ming gestured with the chopsticks in his hand, then deliberately slowed down his movements, put the chopsticks on the table, and then slowly picked them up to pick up the dishes, disguising the use of chopsticks. You try it. Su Ming put the chopsticks in front of Su Ming. Su Ming scratched his head while looking at the chopsticks, then imitated Su Ming, opened his fingers, and held the chopsticks a little stiffly. Well, not bad, try to pick up the food, Su Ming encouraged. Su Ming suddenly raised the chopsticks high and stabbed them hard. Not with a fork. Su Ming covered his face, but found that Su Ming did not stab the food, but a big white flour bun was stuck on the chopsticks, and he bit off more than half of it with his big mouth. Su Ming was happy, and pushed the plate of fried kidney with sauce over, saying, dip it, dip it. Hee hee. Hee hee, Su Ming made an unclear sound in his throat, dipped the bun in some sauce, and surprisingly, he wrapped a ball of kidney in the bun without any instruction, and made a meat bun. Su Ming laughed, and did not expect Su Ming to be quite smart, so he taught him how to use chopsticks and spoons a few more times. During the teaching, Su Ming quickly mastered the use of tableware, and the table was swept clean. Thanks to Su Ming's caution, he bought 10 fist-sized white flour buns for 1 yuan each, and finally fed the big fool. Su Ming and Su Ming were lying on 2 armchairs on the platform of the waterside pavilion by the lake, basking in the sun while disappearing. Su Ming touched his belly and finally stopped burping, but burped loudly. Su Ming turned his head to look at Su Ming, thinking that if he wanted to integrate into human society, he couldn't keep saying and He would have to teach him to speak slowly in the future. Come on, read with me, Aposida. Hee hee, Aposida. In desperation, Su Ming could only temporarily give up the idea of letting Su Ming speak. It would not be too late to talk to him after he had lived in human society for a long time and was familiar with the pronunciation of the people around him. The water quality of Shuixi Lake was still a long way from that of Shuihun Lake. The Tai Sui seemed to have the ability to improve the water quality, but after all, it had only been put into the lake for less than a day, so it had not had much effect for the time being. The giant salamander, who liked clean water sources, stayed in the lake for a short time before crawling to the shore and lying down in a shady place, motionless. From a distance, it looked like a large piece of tree roots. Today was Dehei's turn to rest. Now these cats have learned to eat public food. After getting off work from the cruise ship, they would take a few fish from Shuihun Lake to eat. It dragged a palm-sized crucian carp and nibbled it vigorously beside the giant salamander. From time to time, it turned its head to look at the salamander, as if thinking about where to start. "Hello, Uncle Zhao, I have something to ask you." Su Ming lay on the recliner, crossed his legs and called Zhao Yun. On the other end of the phone, Zhao Yun understood what Su Ming meant and smiled with interest. "Guinness. What good things have you found? Are you going to apply for the Guinness World Record?" Giant salamander. Su Ming checked online. The largest giant salamander on record is 120 years old, 180 centimeters long, and weighs more than 60 kilograms. He measured his own and didn't know how old it was, but the body length reached 244 centimeters and the weight reached 73 kilograms. If nothing goes wrong, this giant salamander will set a new record and become the largest giant salamander in history, recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 137. Speaking of the Guinness World Record, the time can be traced back to more than half a century ago, at a hunting competition in County Wexford, England. Hunting has been regarded as a traditional aristocratic sport by the British upper class since the Middle Ages. During the hunting process, every link is extremely particular, including the selection of horses, the breed of hounds, hunting rifles and marksmanship, and even the small details of clothing. Each part can reflect the style of a traditional aristocrat. Being able to successfully hold a hunting event or to make a big splash in hunting activities are things that traditional aristocrats are proud of. Since the early 19th century, capitalism has flourished, and traditional aristocrats have gradually lost their voice, but the old aristocrats with proud bloodlines still look down on the newly emerging nouveau riche who have money but lack background. Therefore, in activities such as hunting and gatherings, the new and old factions often compete with each other. Sir Hugh Beaver, the executive director of Guinness Brewing Company, is a typical nouveau riche in the eyes of the old aristocrats. At this time, Sir Hugh Beaver's hunting rifle was aimed at a golden plover resting in the reeds more than 40 yards away. 7 or 8 Labrador retrievers were quietly lying beside him, waiting for their master to shoot and hit the target. These obedient hounds would rush forward and capture the poor golden plover. Bang! The gunshot, a puff of green smoke, but the golden plover in the distance had already spread its wings and flew away like an arrow at the moment of the gunshot. Sir Hubifu missed the target, his face slightly reddened, and he muttered, "Oh my God! The golden plover is simply the fastest bird in the world. I bet no hunter can hit a golden plover at 40 yards. Haha, my dear sir, the golden plover is not the fastest bird." The speaker was a white-haired earl not far away. The earl's family has a long history that can be traced back to the Georgian era. He is a typical old aristocrat. He pointed to a grouse he had just hunted and laughed loudly at Hubifu. "Grouse is the fastest bird in the world. Maybe you are only concerned with making money and ignore the most basic biology learning." Sir Hubifu looked a little embarrassed. What he said just now was just a casual remark. To be honest, he really didn't know what the fastest bird in the world was. However, in this situation, Hubifu was unwilling to be ridiculed by the Earl who had been eliminated by history. He said with some displeasure, "Earl Warren, you said that grouse is the fastest flying bird in the world. What evidence can prove this?" "Haha, this does not need to be proved. Our ancestors have proved it in thousands of years of hunting activities. All the old nobles who often participate in hunting know this clearly." Earl Warren laughed. So, in this hunting competition, Earl Warren won the so-called dignity, and the shrewd Sir Hubifu found business opportunities from this ridicule after the competition. If there is a book in the world that can answer the question of what is the real world's first, it will definitely be very popular. So, the Guinness World Records magazine named after the Guinness Beer Company began to be established. In just half a year, it became one of the most popular magazines in continental Europe. After decades of development, the Guinness World Records has influenced the whole world, and Guinness has also grown from a small magazine to a huge international organization. To a certain extent, the Guinness Records organization itself is a world's first. In the 1990s, the Guinness World Records was introduced to China. In China, a country where everyone loves to watch the excitement and compare with each other, Guinness has always received considerable attention. A supergiant salamander can certainly attract many tourists, but if this giant salamander has the halo of world's first, the economic benefits and political influence it can bring will definitely be worlds apart. In addition to the giant salamander, Su-Ming now has the Tai Sui that can apply for the Guinness. According to current records, the Tai Sui he has is about 2 or 3 times larger than the largest Tai Sui currently. However, Su-Ming is not going to let the Tai Sui be exposed too early, and even for a long time, he will not let anyone know that he has such a Tai Sui. First, it is for his own safety. The financial backers behind the poachers of Boss he spent so much money, and they should want this Tai Sui. Once the Tai Sui is exposed, it will inevitably cause trouble. Su-Ming doesn't think that he has the strength to fight against a sponsor who can easily pay millions of dollars for labor and organize an armed theft team. Second, it is from an economic perspective. The research value of the Tai Sui is much higher than that of the giant panda and the giant salamander. Once it is exposed, it may attract government intervention or even direct levy. Although some Tai Sui are preserved by the people and can be sold, and even make a lot of money, that is because those Tai Sui are generally about 100 years old and not valuable, so the government is too lazy to care. The largest Tai Sui in the world is currently preserved in the National Exhibition Hall, so Su-Ming has to be on guard to prevent someone from coming and saying, "Leave it to the country." There is no such concern for the giant salamander. Although the country prohibits the killing, sale, and consumption of wild giant salamanders, it does not prohibit private breeding. Artificial breeding of more than 2 generations of giant salamanders can be used for sale and consumption. The world's largest giant salamander is currently in the hands of a private company in China. It is also used as a breeding fish. It has been breeding for many years and has made a lot of money for the company. If nothing unexpected happens, this giant salamander should be similar to Zhao Yun's antiques. The ownership belongs to him, but he must protect it well and cannot sell or slaughter it. So I told Zhao Yun about the giant salamander. Zhao Yun was also quite interested and said, "It's very simple to apply for Guinness now. You can just fill in the form and pay the fee on their Chinese website." "Hey, let me ask you, is this fish from your zoo or yours?" "It's mine," Su-Ming said. "That's good. If there is a chance in the future, get another female to pair up and try to see if it can lay eggs. The economic value of giant salamanders is not bad. I will help you make contacts and it should be able to sell for a good price." Zhao Yun smiled. Regarding the breeding of giant salamanders, Su-Ming actually checked the internet. In the past few years, a kilogram of giant salamanders sold for 2,000 or 3,000 in restaurants, and the farmers sold them directly for thousands. However, in the past 2 years, the state has been strict, and many high-end consumption has disappeared, and the price of giant salamanders has plummeted to 200 or 300. Even so, it is still much more valuable than the 4 major carps. "I'll try if I have a chance." Su-Ming also smiled. There is no rush to breed it now. The old giant salamander has been single for 100 or 200 years. There is no rush to find a wife. Let's apply for the Guinness record first. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 138. Su-Ming heard that applying for Guinness in the past had to go through a Chinese agency, and the procedures were quite troublesome, so he approached Zhao Yun, who had a wide network of connections in the society. Unexpectedly, the application method had changed. Probably the Chinese agency has made so much money out of it that the British headquarters can no longer stand it. It was sometimes hard for Su-Ming to love some institutions in his country. He was someone who tried to exploit every opportunity to make a fool of himself. The key was that he couldn't do anything good after taking the money. "Mom, don't worry about me. I only have a few dollars and I'm already thinking about being an angry young man." Su Ming slapped himself on the head, then went online to log into the official Guinness website and clicked on the Chinese version. Bang, there was a crisp sound. Su Ming, the wild man sitting next to him, imitated Su Ming and slapped him hard on his head. The sound was as loud as setting off firecrackers, which scared Su Ming jumped. In order to prevent Su Ming from getting lice or something, Su Ming simply shaved his head yesterday. He looked very tough. Su Ming's slap was really careful. A vivid big slap mark appeared, and then he smiled stupidly at Su Ming. He. Su Ming rolled his eyes, thinking that when he was watching movies alone in his room at night, he had to close the door tightly to prevent this guy from imitating some actions that he shouldn't imitate. I submitted the form online and paid the appraisal fee of more than 5,000 yuan. Even if the process was completed, I soon received a text message on my phone: "Dear Su Ming, your process is under review. We will contact you after it is passed. Get in touch." The first person to contact Su Ming was not the Guinness headquarters, but Director Song. The old man gave Su Ming a task, asking him to write down the process of rescuing the golden monkey in a written material. After writing the materials, I submitted them to the higher authorities together with my grant application, requesting the higher authorities to allocate a sum of money to renovate the monkey mountain and improve the monkey's food. The process of discovering the golden monkeys is very important, so you can use snacks, said Director Song. Su Ming was good at making up stories, and there was no problem at all. He smiled and said, "Old director, you are too biased. Dozens of macaques used to live there, but I never saw you asking for money to improve their lives. Come now, I got a golden monkey and lived there for less than 2 days, and you have to remember this. It's not a golden monkey, it's a kindling golden monkey," Director Song said angrily. "You think I didn't want to ask the city for money? The key is that I can't get it. The kindling golden monkey is a treasure, the symbol of our Yangchuan city animals. In the eyes of the superiors, 1,000 macaques are not worth a single kindling snub-nosed monkey. If I don't take advantage of this opportunity and get some money from the superiors, wouldn't it be a waste of time for me as the director of the park?" Su Ming rolled his eyes and said, "Don't all cities have city flowers or something like that? Otherwise, why don't we just ask the higher authorities to issue a document and clearly designate the kindling golden monkey as the city animal of our Yangchuan? We Xiaobai will be the first city beast." Xiaobai was the golden monkey who was almost killed by the giant salamander. Because his face was very pale, Su Ming named him Xiaobai. Su Ming's words were half joking, but Director Song's eyes lit up. "Oh, that's right. You young people are smarter. If it is determined to be a market animal, the higher UPS will definitely allocate money to the zoo regularly. However, the city will the name beast is not very good. It sounds like a corpse. Well, it's better to call it a mascot." Su Ming was now very familiar with Director Song, and he joked, "Boss, you seem to be obsessed with money recently. You are not at all like the old scientist with both virtue and skill that I knew at the beginning. You kid, do you think I'm only here for myself?" Director Song pointed to the chair opposite the desk and motioned for Su Ming to sit down. After Su Ming sat down, he said, "I will retire next year. Even if the zoo closes down, my retirement salary will not be less. Share the money. I'll say hello to you privately and don't spread the word. It has been decided from the top that the documents will be issued early next year and the zoo will be reorganized. If I fight more for the zoo now, you will have less pressure in the future." Since the day Su Ming entered the zoo, various parties have been talking about restructuring. In fact, this matter has been rumored for 2 or 3 years, and now the time has finally been set. When it comes to restructuring, Su Ming is different from the uneasy mentality of most employees in the zoo. He has some expectations. Most employees of the zoo are vested interests within the system. Of course, they do not want the system to be shaken or even broken. But Su Ming is different. Although he has a staff, he hopes that the zoo can operate according to the business model and not suffer too much restrictions. Have you changed the details specifically? Su Ming asked. It's under discussion. Director Song smiled. Although it hasn't been finalized yet, there is a general principle. The better we do here, the more confident we will be when we talk about it, and we can strive for better results. Conditions of. That's just right. Not only the golden monkey, I'm also planning to apply for Guinness for the giant salamander, Su Ming said. Director Song slammed the table and said with satisfaction, very good. Remember to make the noise bigger. This is a critical period, and the zoo needs to show its presence. Guinness headquarters is still very efficient. In just 4 or 5 days, Su Ming's application was approved. A foreigner with a bad accent even made a long-distance call to Su Ming and told him that there will be a Chinese event next Saturday. Regional appraisers specialize in zoo appraisals. Beauty, I am the first to inform you this time, and I will leave the media matters to you, Su Ming said to Nangongyan on the other end of the phone. Nangongyan naturally agreed to what Su Ming asked her to do. After discussing the specific operations with Su Ming for a while, she joked, you might as well hire me to be your spokesperson. Okay, when my career becomes bigger in the future, I will leave all the external publicity to you. Don't be reluctant to give up your position in the TV station when the time comes, Su Ming said. Nangongyan smiled charmingly, then it's a deal. Su Ming sometimes talks carelessly, especially when he is with someone like Nangongyan and Wang Hao. He basically just talks about whatever comes to mind, very casually. He also didn't expect that Nangongyan would take the few words he casually said today very seriously, and even adjusted his development plan specifically for this. If Nangongyan's goal in the TV station was to be an excellent reporter and host, now Nangongyan's goal is to get to know some colleagues in the media, so that she can help Su Ming in this regard in the future. I can finally see it. This guy is so focused on his career now that he doesn't have any love for his children at all. But that's fine. If the love between children is too long, the heroism will be short. If he is a man and a young man, if he spends the whole day just thinking about men and women, I don't like him. Anyway, I am still young and beautiful, can I let him run away? Hey, we have a long time ahead. Although Nangongyan has never been successful in dealing with Su Ming, she has never lacked confidence. In fact, what Nangongyan didn't notice was that since Su Ming saw the BMW man harassing her last time, there were a few inconspicuous wasps around her unknowingly, protecting her 24 hours a day. Human beings are not like vegetation, so how can they be ruthless? Even big animals have hearts and minds. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 139. China has 129 Guinness World Records so far. Every time a new record is created, all media will hype it up for a while, especially in recent years, with the development of the internet. Every time a record is created, it will spread all over the country immediately, and hundreds of millions of people will know it quickly. However, it seems that there has never been a Guinness record that has been hyped up before it is created. The giant salamander in Yangchuan Zoo seems to have broken this rule, at least, within the scope of Yangchuan City. The day after Su Ming and Mirongyan talked on the phone, some posts about giant salamanders appeared on the Yangchuan forum one after another. The first posts were some common travel notes. Nowadays, in the Yangchuan forum, 70% to 80% of the local travel notes are about the zoo, such as lucky cats, mountain-sized alligator turtles, baby finless porpoises, super big fish, etc., almost occupying the entire page. The original relatively deserted Yangchuan Tourism Special Edition has become lively because of this. If it were a different company, the forum members would have been impatient if all the travel notes about the company were flooding the forum all day, and they would definitely think that it was a commercial promotion by the internet trolls. But the zoo is different, with new things happening one after another, and they are all rare new things in decades. For example, riding a fish is the first time in the world. The key is that it is close to them. If someone doesn't believe it, spend $2 to take the bus to the zoo and experience it yourself, and you will know what this is true. The first travel notes were attached with some photos of giant salamanders. There was a brave guy who somehow broke through the security blockade and lay 1 meter away from the salamander. He also stretched out 2 fingers to make a V shape and took a photo. In the photo, the salamander is longer than the person taking the photo. Salamanders are very common, but salamanders that are this big are almost like spirits. Ordinary people have never heard of them in their lives. Later, someone uploaded a short video. In the video, the giant salamander changed its image of gentle and cute in the minds of the public. It showed a ferocious face, and its big mouth full of fangs bit off a thick branch with a snap. These days, ordinary people want something strange and like excitement. If you find a crocodile to bite off a branch, it will definitely not make people think it's a big deal, but a giant salamander as big as a crocodile did this, which simply subverted everyone's cognition. It's not uncommon for a wolf to bite a sheep to death, but if it's a sheep, it will bite off the neck of another sheep with a snap, which is definitely explosive news. This short video was immediately circulated by all parties, not to mention the circle of friends, and several major domestic websites also reprinted it. In just 2 or 3 days, it achieved good clicks. At this time, Yangchuan TV station launched a special program called This Zoo Is Not Ordinary at a very timely time. The reporter for this program was Nanggong Yan, the new star of Yangchuan TV station. The assistant director of Yangchuan Zoo, Comrade Su Ming, who was in charge of animals, accompanied the crew to the entire zoo and report on the latest happenings in the zoo. There were not only lucky cats and riding fish, but there were so many things to report in the zoo. Even some things that Su Ming considered to be second tier attracted more viewers' attention than most news. The zoo has always been concerned about the release of captive animals into the wild. This little wolf is called Huiya. It has successfully lived in the back mountain for a period of time and has begun to adapt to survival in the wild. Yes, as the audience has seen, the most unique monkey in the Monkey Mountain is the symbol of Yangchuan City, the kindling golden monkey that has not been discovered for many years. As for why golden monkeys can live with macaques, is there any need to ask? Animals also need to build a harmonious society. Different types of monkeys love each other, eat fruits together, and have wives together. Director, please delete this sentence in the post-production. Let me clarify that the sentence "look at your sister" was not said by me, but by these 2 macaws. Here, I would like to call on tourists and friends to visit the park in a civilized manner, especially in front of parrots. Don't say swear words, like me, teach them civilized language. Say hello handsome guy, damn, you 2 are still. If you dare to scold me, I will strip you of your hair. Director, delete this sentence too. Under the care of provincial and municipal leaders, and with the strong support of the Provincial Academy of Agricultural Sciences, the zoo is about to build a small aquarium for the Yangtze River dolphins to live in, and it will also be open to tourists. By the way, the giant salamander known as the bandit on the internet will become a neighbor of the Yangtze River dolphin family. Nanggong Yan asked at the right time, I heard that you found the bandit in the mountains, and you are preparing to apply for the Guinness World Record for it, is that right? Su Ming nodded, yes. I have good news for everyone. My application has been approved. This Saturday morning, Guinness will send a special certification officer to the zoo for on-site certification. At that time, the zoo will be open for free for 1 day. All citizens and media friends are welcome to come and witness the birth of a new world record. 3 days later, in the middle of the largest lawn in the zoo, a temporary platform was set up, with a bright banner hanging on the platform, and the words "World's Largest Wild Salamander" fluttering in the wind. In the center of the platform, there is a transparent aquarium several meters long, and a giant salamander is lying on the pebbles at the bottom of the tank. Under Su Ming's deliberate instructions, the giant salamander shook its head at the tourists around it, opened its mouth from time to time, showing its fangs, and put on a ferocious look, which scared some timid girls to scream in low voices. The best seats in the audience were occupied by the media who came after hearing the news. More than a dozen media formed a semicircle in the audience. However, the sound of these professional media shooting was completely drowned out by the noise of tourists on the lawn behind. Behind the media team, there were huge crowds of tourists. Today is the weekend, most citizens are resting, the zoo is free, and you can witness the birth of a world record with your own eyes. This opportunity doesn't come every day. Everyone, please be quiet. A strange and sharp voice sounded from the loudspeaker on the stage. Huh. Instead of being quiet, the audience burst into a good-natured laugh. Wang Jianxi and director Song, who were sitting in the leader seats at the back of the stage, couldn't help laughing. Su Ming stood behind the loudspeaker, but he was not the one who spoke. On his left and right, there were 2 round stools, each with a half-meter tall macaw standing on it. The sentence just now was said by the little parrot on the left. After the little parrot finished speaking, she shrank her neck and made way. The big parrot on the right immediately leaned over and came to the speaker, saying in a strange voice, "Now, please welcome Mr. Zhao, the Guinness certification officer, to come on stage." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 140. After Sister Parrot finished saying this, a melodious sound of Scottish bagpipes rang out outside the lawn, and the crowd below automatically dispersed to both sides, making way. Zhao Yun, wearing a suit, walked slowly towards the stage with a smile on his face, and greeted the people around him as he walked. A row of bagpipers wearing traditional Scottish kilts and small hats with feathers on their heads followed behind Zhao Yun, playing traditional Scottish music. Su Ming also learned a few days ago that there was a certification officer named Zhao Yun who was responsible for certifying the records. At first, he thought it was someone with the same name, but after getting confirmation from Zhao Yun himself, he was sure that it was the museum owner, a middle-aged handsome man. This Guinness certification officer was just one of Zhao Yun's many idle positions. Su Ming couldn't help but feel a little emotional. This middle-aged handsome man was really deep in the water, and he had a share everywhere. Zhao Yun walked onto the stage, shook hands with Su Ming, and then, in front of the whole audience, loudly read the oath of the Guinness certification officer and explain the certification rules clearly. After doing all this, Zhao Yun took off his suit, put on a rubber protective suit, and walked into the aquarium from one end, accompanied by Su Ming, to measure the length of the giant salamander. Then several security guards came up to pick up the giant salamander and put it on a large electronic scale to weigh it. Although most people already knew the result, when Zhao Yun stood in front of the loudspeaker again with the certification result, the whole audience suddenly became quiet and looked at Zhao Yun with expectation. Dear friends, after the full supervision and certification of this certification officer, this rare wild giant salamander is 247 centimeters long and weighs 73.16 kilograms, which exceeds the record of 12 years. It is currently the largest giant salamander in the world. Zhao Yun's voice sounded above the lawn through 4 large loudspeakers placed around. He handed the certificate to Su Ming and said with a smile, "Congratulations to you, Mr. Su, and to all the friends present. We have witnessed the birth of the 130th Guinness World Record in China. Bang, bang, bang. Outside the lawn, a row of salutes rang out 8 times in a row, and countless ribbons and gold foil flew into the air, flying all over the sky, like a grand daytime fireworks show. At this moment, the flashlights under the stage almost covered the sun's light, and the sound of the camera and the cheers rang out. I don't know who was the first to raise his hands and shouted loudly, "Bandit!" World no one. Immediately afterwards, more people raised their hands, like a wave of people, hundreds of voices gathered into 4 words. World no one. World no one. An ordinary Guinness certification, in other places, would at most be reported by a few local media, but the certification of the bandit giant salamander was hyped up by Su Ming into a feast for the participation of all people. The certification ceremony was just the beginning. After the awards ceremony, a dozen barbecue grills and a row of trays with drinks and cakes were brought in from outside the venue, and they were placed around the lawn. A few clowns appeared from nowhere, holding a long string of balloons in their hands, and walked into the group of laughing children. The vendors who usually live near the zoo were also allowed to enter today. They sold soft and white marshmallows, red and sour candied haws, large bowls of tea to clear heat and quench thirst, and colorful soap bubbles floating in the air. Not far away, the occasional sound of popcorn popping brought everyone back to their childhood. At the same time as the picnic, some relatively docile animals in the zoo were brought by their respective keepers to the center of the lawn and had a close and intimate contact with the adults and children present. And today's star, the giant salamander bandit, was really armed into a bandit. There were a lot of materials left from the last time he armed a few big fish, which were recycled by Su Ming and used to tailor a set of armor for it. He wore short jeans on his 4 legs, with wooden revolvers on both sides of his waist, and a headscarf on his head, revealing only 2 small black eyes. He walked through the crowd carelessly, shaking his head and tail. He looked like a bandit in the American West. This event started at 9:30 in the morning and lasted until the zoo was about to close in the afternoon. Before leaving, everyone received a newly printed zoo brochure for free. Many people still felt that they were not satisfied. It doesn't matter if you are not satisfied, because Yangchuan City TV will replay this event tonight. According to the virtue of the TV station, such a popular program will definitely be replayed again and again. If you are not satisfied, you can just watch TV at home. All parties are very satisfied with the results of this certification. The government even called to praise it, but director Song was a little amused. It was he who asked Su Ming to make a bigger momentum, so as to increase the popularity of the zoo and strive for more good policies for the zoo in the reform meeting. Who would have thought that after Su Ming's planning, the momentum was not only big, but also amazing. If you didn't know, you would think that Yangchuan City was holding a large-scale celebration. China has many Guinness records, including this time, a total of 130, but never before has it been so grand and impressive. In this way, of course, it will far exceed the previous goal expectations. The effect is undoubtedly good. After the TV station broadcast it several times, Yangchuan Zoo has become a little famous in the country. But this money was also spent quite a bit. In order to prepare for this celebration, the funds for protecting golden monkeys were just approved by the higher authorities, but more than half of them were spent before they were warmed up in the zoo's account. "You kid, you make money quickly and spend it even faster," director Song said a little helplessly. Su Ming looked indifferent and smiled, "As long as the money is worth spending, it will not be wasted." Su Ming's words were soon confirmed. In the next few weeks, the flow of people to the zoo skyrocketed, exceeding the usual double, even exceeding the flow of people on major festivals such as National Day and May Day. The extra ticket money alone has already made back all the expenses of holding the celebration. In the past, the zoo was not important in the hearts of the people of Yangchuan City. It was nothing more than an ordinary leisure place. Because it was far away from the city, it was actually the kind of leisure place that people would only think of it when they really had nowhere else to go. People might not come here once a year. After Su Ming's efforts, the zoo immediately became a very distinctive and interesting place. Not only did the local citizens of Yangchuan come to visit whenever they had time, but also those who came to Yangchuan for business or tourism from other places regarded the Yangchuan Zoo as a must-see attraction. There were also group tickets for some schools and units to visit, which also made a lot of money. Not only did the zoo make money, but Su Ming also made money. It was a simple reason that with more people, his various businesses also rose with the tide, so that Su Ming had already begun to consider adding cruise ships and raising the ticket price for riding fish. Economic benefits were one aspect, and there were also political gains. That morning, the district notified that Comrade Su Ming of the zoo was named the District Model Worker of the Year for his outstanding performance and great contribution to the construction of the zoo and Yangchuan City.